Hey everyone, welcome to the Facebook Live event. Today's event is all about sleeping your way to health. Full disclosure, sometimes I feel like when we're preparing these things, I have to look inside myself and say, Mark, you're about to teach some things that unfortunately you yourself struggle with adhering to. And in full disclosure, today is definitely one of those days. So we're going to talk about some stuff that I myself struggle with. Again, I am Mark Bennett. I'm the COO of ID Life, and we're here today to talk about sleep and its importance. So let's jump right in. Sleep is should be, I shouldn't say is, but it should be the most important thing that we do on a daily basis. It is vitally, critically important to not only our health, but also to avoiding disease, to repairing the body. But unfortunately, sleep is the one area almost every single one of us is willing to compromise on. It seems like sleep is always that thing of, when we have that infamous excuse of time that we're willing to get less of in order to get more of the other stuff done. Especially as we get older, as we become adults, as we get active, sleep is that thing that it just eludes us, and as we're going to see today, is causing all kinds of problems for us. So how big of a problem is it? 75% of Americans struggle with getting adequate sleep. That's 75%. So, you do the math, 340 million Americans, that's a lot of people, over 250 million people that struggle every single time that they're trying to go to sleep. They're just not getting enough adequate sleep. It's either a time issue or it's a commitment issue, or it could even be some things that we are doing to ourselves that we're going to talk about today with regard to some of the technological advances and all the other things that we deal with these days. One of the numbers, though, that is really important that I think we need to look at is this one right here. See, this is becoming an epidemic. We have teenagers, more than 50% of them in the U.S., that are getting at least 2 hours less sleep a night than is recommended every single night. Now, let's not forget, the brain stops developing at age 22 to 23. The bodies are continuing to develop well into the teens, for some young men, even into early 20s. We have all of these developing systems and organs and bodily functions and stuff that are being inhibited permanently as a result of this little issue right here. And a lot of this is contributing to unnecessary stress. Phones are a big issue, blue lights, and all these other things that we're going to talk about today. But this is one of those things we really need to get a handle on, and we need to really get our kids to understand they have to get adequate sleep. It's not something that should be compromised on. Let's go through some interesting facts about sleep. When we were going through and preparing this, it was very interesting to see some of the things that you may or may not be aware of. First, Guinness Book of World Records, you should know, no longer will record the longest period of a person goes without sleeping because they consider it too dangerous to human health. So literally, the Guinness Book of World Records says no longer are we going to register this because we don't want people trying to stay awake for long periods of time. You should know, though, that Guinness is still doing, sword swallowing and glass eating. So if you're inclined to do those, they are not been deemed to be too dangerous. Trying to stay awake for too long of a period is dangerous. Sword swallowing, glass eating, perfectly okay. So just a fun fact about sleep. You should also know that humans are the only mammals that willingly delay sleep. All the other animals on the planet, they get sleepy, they go to sleep. They're not trying to keep themselves awake. We are the only ones that do that. So maybe we should learn something from the animal kingdom on this one. Let's look at this. How long does it take you to fall asleep? And I want you to think about this one for a second. Does it take you less than 5 minutes? Are you one of those types of people that your head hits the pillow and you just fall into la la land? Or are you one of those types of people that your head hits the pillow and it takes you about 10 minutes? The reason why I asked the question might surprise you. See, because if it takes you less than 5 minutes, you're more than likely sleep deprived. If it takes you about 10 minutes, guess what? You have an ideal sleep pattern. Now, that one's actually for my wife. She's the type that can just hit the pillow and boom, she's gone. I'm the type that I hit the pillow and it takes me a while, but I can't tell you that I have the ideal sleep pattern. I can just say that on this particular one, I get to win. But in the reality is, most people believe that when they're the type that can just head hit the pillow, they fall asleep, they think everything's great and fine in the world. But really, what the scientists are finding is those are the people that are most likely sleep deprived and having issues in their sleep pattern. Here's an interesting topic. 75% of people dream in color. Now, another interesting fact, if you didn't know, is that you cannot dream about a face unless you have actually seen that face somewhere before. So think about all those wonderful dreams that you've ever had in your life about people, about places, about things. You can't dream someone's face unless you've seen it before. It's an interesting little fact. But what's interesting about this issue is 75% of people are dreaming in color. But did you know that before color TV, only 15% of people dreamed in color? It's funny how the human mind associates what it sees on a regular basis, but the reality is, prior to color television, yes, back in the 1950s when you had black and white, most people were dreaming were dreaming in black and white. Now, because we're inundated with color on a regular basis, 75% of us are dreaming in color. So another little interesting fact about sleep. Let's look at this one. 1 extra hour of sleep a night instead of watching TV. So, this one is, my wife and I just reversed. I won one a minute ago. Now she's going to win this one. I'm the type that, it does this. So full disclosure, again, you learn something as you go through these things. But the whole idea here is if you will simply just turn off that television and sleep that extra hour every night rather than watching the TV, you're going to lose about 14.3 pounds per year, because sleep is actually going to help you recover. It's going to help you restore. It's going to let the body systems do what they need to do, increasing metabolism, and actually help you lose weight. A lot of people are heavy and or struggle with weight as a result of inadequate sleep. One of the things that we're going to go through in a second. But the whole idea here is simply by turning off the television and putting your head on the pillow, you can lose some weight. Now this one's interesting. This one's for all the moms and dads out there with little ones. The scientific studies have been shown that if we put babies down to sleep when they are tired as opposed to when they actually fall asleep. So, when my daughter was little, I used to rock her until she fell asleep, and then I would put her in her crib, and she wasn't the greatest sleeper in the world. When you're looking at all the research, what you're finding is if you put them down when they're tired, they will become self-soothers, which means they're going to fall asleep independently, and they'll also be able to put themselves back to sleep if they wake up during the night. So if you have a restless baby and one that doesn't like to sleep at night, one of the things you might want to try is, instead of putting them completely to sleep in your arms, is getting them tired and then laying them down in the bed so that they can fall asleep naturally. Just one of those fun little things that you might want to try to consider. Here was an interesting thing as well. Of the percentage of doctors that don't feel they have enough time to discuss sleep-related issues during office visits, when they did a survey, it was 60%. What's interesting, though, when they ask those same physicians, should sleep be brought up during an office visit that somebody's coming in, especially on an annual physical exam and things like that, the physician said 82% of physicians believe that sleep should be discussed between the doctor and patient because it is a direct link to disease and disorders. So what's interesting here is a lot of doctors don't think they have the time, but 82% of them believe that that is part of the discussion that you should be having with your physician. So just keep that in mind when you're talking to your doctor. Now, this one is off the charts, what we're about to talk about here. And if you live with a snorer, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. But 30% of Americans, roughly a little over 100 million people out there, are snoring on a nightly basis. Now, that snoring is the primary cause of sleep disruption for 90 million people every night. Let's let that set in for a second. Snoring is the primary cause of sleep disruption for 90 million Americans every single night. Now, what is that doing to us? Well, snoring partner will make the non-snoring partner wake up 20 times per night. Or another way to look at it, that is an average sleep loss of 1 hour every single night. So, if you're sleep deprived, if you're waking up and you're tired and you don't feel like you're getting enough sleep, one of those wonderful things that you may have a discussion with your partner is about their snoring, because it very well may be that your sleep is being inhibited and it's actually causing you problems as a result of that snoring. So There's all kinds of different gadgets and doodads and other things out there now, but I think the newest commercial I saw was for a bed that elevates, and what's funny is one of the spouses thinks that the other one is a snorer, so they lift them up and it stops, and then the other one starts snoring, and then the other one reaches over there and lifts them up. So it's funny, but at the same time it's not, because this is actually contributing to a lot of the disease and issues that we have. 36% of Americans are driving drowsy. This is driving to work every day. Now, what's interesting is when you're driving drowsy, you don't have the same attention that you normally do, especially if you're in traffic, when people all of a sudden stop in front of you, cut in front of you. As a result, a lot of accidents are caused by this one little issue. Just the driving drowsy, and here you are. This is the biggest issue. Let's talk about this one though. Staying awake for 16 hours is the same as having a blood alcohol content of 0.05. Now, that seems extreme, but it's kind of giving you an idea of what it's like when you get behind the wheel after, kind of a staying up. Stay awake while they're behind the wheel of a car. This is the exact same as somebody who decides that they want to drink and get behind the wheel. We have to understand and appreciate what our abilities are before we put ourselves in that type of situation. So just be cognizant of if you're really sleep deprived and this is an issue for you, then jump on and make sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can also take care of others. Let's talk about sleep deprivation. See, sleep deprivation is a big issue. And in fact, it has been directly linked to 3 major disasters that have happened in the world. In fact, sleep deprivation was directly linked to the 3 Mile Island nuclear meltdown that happened here in the States. It was also linked to the Chernobyl nuclear accident. In fact, that place still kind of glows like a Christmas tree. It was so bad. And of course, the one that most of us can remember because we saw it happen on live television, the Exxon Valdez disaster. All 3 of these, once the investigators went in and did their work, found that sleep deprivation played a role in all 3 of those things occurring. So, you may not work in a nuclear power plant. You may not run a steamship, but you do have a job. You do have a car. You do have things that you're doing. Sleep deprivation does inhibit our ability to function as well as to react, and sometimes it can cause mass problems. Dysomnia. Now, this is something a lot of people had never heard of. A lot of people have heard of insomnia before, but they've never heard of dysomnia before. That's the inability to get out of bed in the morning. So these are the people that love their alarm clock, the ones that love it so much that they want to hit it 10 times a morning and continue to sleep, and hit that snooze button. These are the people that, aren't the morning people. They don't want to crawl out of bed. Well, did you know, though, that is an early warning sign of nutritional deficiency? That's right. If you're one of those people, if you have a hard time in the morning trying to get out of bed, if you're one of those people that continuously hits the alarm snooze button, it very well may be an early warning sign that you have a nutritional deficiency that you need to pay attention to. Also, it's going to exponentially increase your risk of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and depression. See, sleep is directly linked to the greatest risk factors for death and disease that we have in this country. I mean, what you're looking at right there are 4 of the top causes of disease and death in this country. Heart disease, diabetes, obesity, depression. I mean, you can't get any higher than this. And all of this is related to our inability to simply take the time, yes, I'm saying take the time, to spend more time sleeping. A very pleasurable thing to do, by the way, something that is actually enjoyable, something that actually gets you great benefit. You actually now have permission to sleep more because you actually do need to sleep more. Now, I will tell you, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. A lot of scientists have shown that sleeping too much can actually cause problems, but the reality is you do need to take the time to sleep more. Because if you don't, and you're one of these people that decides, hey, 5 to 7 is enough for me, well, you're going to start on this disease path. But if you're one of those people that says, hey, I can operate on 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, you need to know these stats. If you're one of those people, you have a 2.5 times higher risk for diabetes, you have a 45% higher risk for heart attack, 12% higher risk for death, and a 500% greater risk of being overweight. That's right. If you're one of those people that says, oh, 4 to 5 hours enough for me, that's all I need, you are exponentially increasing your chances of struggling with weight for the rest of your life. Take the time, actually find your bed, spend more time in it, get some good rest. Now, how can weight be connected to sleep? How is this possible? Well, you actually have two hormones in your body that kind of affect your hunger and your what we call satiety. It's when you feel full. Leptin is that full receptor. That's your full receptor hormone. That's the thing that goes into the body and says, hey, you know what? I'm done. I don't need to eat anymore. In fact, this is a great chart kind of showing you what happens before you eat. You know, that ghrelin hormone is going through your body and, you know, the stomach is like, hey, feed me. When you finished eating, you know, the leptin hormone is saying, hey, I'm good. I don't need any more. That's what's happening here. You know, you basically have these things. Now, when you don't sleep, okay, and you're sleep deprived, what happens is your ghrelin hormone is turned on and your leptin hormone is turned off. Another way to look at that is this. And it probably is about this extreme. Ghrelin, again, I'm hungry. Leptin is, you know what, I'm good, I'm fine. But because it's asleep, that ghrelin thing is out of control because there's nothing there to stop it. In fact, one of the images that you can get in your head is this one right here. I mean, you literally are kind of the pig at the trough. I mean, it's just one of those, it's buffet time. It's time to just eat away. It is one of those things where when we don't get enough sleep, we are literally out of control with our eating habits. It's just, unfortunately, that's the way our hormones work. There's no way to get around it. We have to understand that sleep is directly related to our appetite and what we're doing. There's another thing that you need to understand about sleep, and that's the circadian rhythm. See, the circadian rhythm is the body's natural process of telling us when we need to start getting tired, when it's going to start producing melatonin, when it's actually going to start giving us that sign of, hey, it's time to go to bed. See, our bodies were designed to be in a particular rhythm, to go through a particular cycle, to have a particular process that we go through. Unfortunately, we do certain things that inhibit that natural rhythm. Let's start out with caffeine. See, this is a deadly cycle, you know, because most people think caffeine is the direct link to energy. And as a result, you know, I need caffeine when I lack energy. What most people don't understand is you lack energy because you didn't get sleep the night before. So as a result, you take caffeine to stay awake. Unfortunately, though, 40% of the population or more, they're still trying to get the numbers, but at least 40% of the population is a slow metabolizer of caffeine. So what does that mean? What that means is if you're going to consume caffeine after about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which a lot of people do, you have just created a situation from a metabolic standpoint where you will not be falling asleep until 11 or 12 o'clock at night, or your body won't start to naturally produce the melatonin it needs in order to actually go to sleep naturally. So in other words, what you're doing is you're trying to give yourself energy, and what you're actually doing is inhibiting your sleep cycle. And if you have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, you're basically causing the issue by simply adding caffeine to the diet. So understand that, you know, caffeine is that cyclical type approach to taking care of the issue that is directly linked to our inability to get enough sleep in the first place. So we link it to energy, but, you know, one of the other things you should be looking at is, am I getting enough sleep? Let's talk about melatonin. You know, melatonin is the body's natural hormone that is produced to say, hey, it's sleepy time. It's time for me to go to sleep. Well, unfortunately, we are inhibiting our natural production of melatonin by something called blue light. See, blue light is on the spectrum of light right along the same thing as UV light. You have the UVA, UVB, and then, of course, you have that blue light that's just shooting in. So what happens is when we start looking at these things that have blue light, our body is basically saying, okay, well, it's not time to start producing melatonin yet because obviously it's still, quote-unquote, daylight, and I don't go to sleep during daylight, and we're messing with our circadian rhythm. The 3 main reasons of blue light causing us our inability to sleep are these things right here. All 3 of these things are found in most bedrooms. You have an alarm system that, yes, it has a blue light on it, a television, which is going to inhibit our ability to produce melatonin naturally, and then our infamous cell phones. Those cell phones, even now, even the cell phone companies are starting to figure it out. You know, the newest iPhones, you can actually set a time when it's going to go to what they call a warm light or a yellow type light. The whole idea behind that is so that you can still be looking at your phone and it's not a blue light, so it won't inhibit your body's natural production of melatonin. But let's look at the phones for a second, because they play a secondary role that we need to understand. See, those phones cause us to be Pavlov's dogs. If you understand who Pavlov was, you know, he's basically trying to teach people how they react to situations based upon a cue. In this particular, a bell knew that, you know, hey, it's food time. What's interesting is we're the same way with our phones. Think about it. Every time it rings, dings, vibrates, or makes any type of sound at all, our natural reaction is to reach for it, move for it, try to find it. I mean, the average American spends less than 15 minutes with their phone out of arm's reach a day. Usually that's because they're in the shower. But for the most part, it is one of those things where we unconsciously are reacting to when this thing vibrates or dings or whatever. What most of us do, though, is right at night before we're going to go to bed, we put these things next to the nightstand. We put it on sleep mode so that, you know, it's just sitting there, it'll just vibrate. And we unconsciously react to it even while we sleep. See, because when that thing vibrates on the nightstand, while you may not be conscious of the fact that you're waking up, you may be in a nice deep REM sleep, but all of a sudden, boom, you get brought into that stage 1 of sleep, and you're almost so awake, sometimes people actually reach over there to check it. Trust me when I say the little email that you just got from Macy's or one of the other department stores about the super special sale that they're going to have will wait till morning. You got to get this thing out of the bedroom. It is causing all kinds of issues and problems for our sleep patterns. Sleep aids, big issue in this country. They're all over the place. All kinds of different forms. I mean, from masks to dream catchers, you name it. There's all kinds of types of sleep aids out there. But the main one I want to talk about is this. Over 65 million prescriptions written each year for sleep. 65 million prescriptions. On top of that, we have over 100 million over-the-counter sleep aids that are sold. Now see, unfortunately what happens is when we move to the pharmaceutical world, or even when we move to the over-the-counter world, we're dealing with products that have an addictive quality. Because see, what happens is it starts a cycle. It starts a cycle of these things are loaded with ingredients that basically stop the body's natural production of melatonin. What we're telling the body is, hey, look, you don't need to produce melatonin because I have this sleep aid that's going to help us go to sleep. So stop producing the melatonin naturally. We'll just use this thing. So what do I mean by this cycle? Well, see, if you start out at the top, you can't sleep, so you take the sleeping pill. Unfortunately, what happens is the body starts to develop a tolerance for that, so you increase the dosage to the maximum amount it calls for. That increase causes an addiction because when the body has this sleep aid in the system, it will not produce melatonin, which means, guess what? You stop taking it for a night, you can't sleep. Why? Because the body doesn't think it needs to produce melatonin because it stopped doing it when you started taking these sleep aids. So you have this addiction. The only way you can sleep is by taking this pill. Well, when you decide that I'm going to stop doing it for a while, you're going to go through withdrawal, which is going to cause the insomnia to come back. In other words, you can't sleep again, which creates the dependency that starts the whole cycle all over again. See, we have to avoid situations where we are going to be taking things that stops the body's natural production of melatonin. It's not something that's healthy for us. It's not something that's going to help us. We have to get off the cycle. Now, how is one way that we can do that? The best way that we can do this, is something that we actually teach our children. See, I mean, when we are trying to get an infant to get into what we call a cycle, or we're trying to get them into a pattern, or we're trying to get them into, that wonderful schedule that everyone wants to get the kids into. And that means bedtime at 8 and they wake up at 7 and, everything's great and fine in the world. But here's the thing, every time, as parents, we know we're going to have a certain bedtime, we're going to have a certain ritual, we're going to do certain things, and the body is going to naturally get used to that. And what I'm talking about here is the kiddos. And what happens is about 30 minutes before that natural ritual begins, the body starts signaling the concept to the hormone of melatonin and saying, hey, look, you need to start producing, because here in about 30 minutes, I know we're going to go to bed. So I need you to start getting me tired, because I know this system is coming through, because my circadian rhythm is telling me this is the natural time when I'm starting to wind down for the evening. So we teach our kids this and we do all these things, but unfortunately we don't ourselves practice what we preach as adults. The best thing that you can do for your sleep pattern is to develop a normal habit. When you're going to take your kids and you're going to establish that time, do the same thing for yourself. You know, whatever your ritual is going to be, try to establish a guaranteed bedtime that you're going to bed every night. You know, try to keep to it the best you can, and watch how your sleep naturally improves itself. Watch how your body starts to naturally produce melatonin. Get the blue lights out of the bedroom. Do all those things. If you still struggle, though, because some people will, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have stresses in their lives and they're dealing with other diseases and muscle-related issues and pain and those types of things that are causing sleep issues. If, in fact, you do need something to help you, what you need to be looking for is something that has, you know, these types of things. You need to find something that's non-habit forming, has non-habit forming ingredients that can help you fall asleep easily, not something that's going to just completely knock you out. Something that's going to help you sleep soundly, but most importantly, help you wake refreshed. The good news is that at ID Life, you know, we've developed that. It's a simple little sleep strip that you put on your tongue or the inside of your cheek. Within 20 to 30 minutes, you're going to fall asleep easily, you're going to sleep soundly, and you're going to wake refreshed. The whole reason why we created this non-habit forming ingredient formula was to try to help people get away from the pharmaceuticals, the over-the-counter sleep aids that are so addictive. And more importantly, just to try to help people getting back into a natural sleep cycle and understand the importance of sleep. That's why this came out. See, I hope you've gotten some benefit from today, because if nothing else, what you now have is permission to sleep more. Again, enjoyable, something that can really, really help you help yourself. And in fact, remember, from a disease standpoint, from a weight standpoint, from an obesity standpoint, probably the thing that is inhibiting you the most from getting the outcomes and the results that you're looking for is lack of sleep.